It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. On Friday during President Trump's press conference where he was declaring a national emergency, he signed the budget deal and declared a national emergency. He had there with him angel moms. These are moms, are parents of the victims of illegal immigration where their kids have been murdered. Their kids have been taken from them because we can't figure out how to control who comes in and out of our own country. And so these are preventable deaths. It's really sad. As a matter of fact, there was an exchange with President Trump and Chuck Todd. And, Chuck Todd disputed that there was an emergency, disputed that there was danger. And, of course, then President Trump looked are you going to say that to the angel moms? Joining us now, we have the director of the Remembrance Project, Maria Espinoza, is back with us. Maria, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Good morning, Paul. Thanks so much for having me on.
So this idea, this idea of a national emergency, everyone kind of saw it coming for a very, very long time. What was your reaction to the news on Friday?
Well, the national emergency does need to take place because we obviously do not have a secure border. But it's really disappointing, Paul, that 2 years ago, and I won't stay on this too long, the failure of the leadership of Paul Ryan, rests on their entire Congress's shoulder, but mainly Paul Ryan, former Speaker. When we control the House, and we could have, he could have put forth a bill and allocated the funds to build a wall. It's there. There is legislation already just sitting there, but they have not funded it, allocated the funds. We're playing around with $1.4 billion that President Trump will receive. But, we need $25 billion. I just can't fathom and wrap my head around the fact that to secure our nation, American politicians sit on their hands and care more about the illegal aliens than trying to protect their own citizens. It's ridiculous, and I hope that every single one of your listeners rises up and calls the White House in support of President Trump and just hounds these legislators and asking them and demanding, actually. We're done asking, Paul, because we know we don't get anything that will be beneficial to this country and beneficial and especially to the safety, Paul, of every single American, regardless of your political leanings.
We're talking to you with Maria Espinoza, the National Director of the Remembrance Project. You can go to remembranceproject.org. This is an organization that's out there trying to remember those who have been killed because of illegal immigration. And so I know, the President, Maria, is aware of your organization. And I know you guys are working every day to make sure people, you're trying to stop this terrible problem. Now, this goes a long way to do it. However, there are members of you in the Republican Party that are not in agreement with declaring a national emergency. What's your response to them?
Well, I'll respond to them. And our website is theremembranceproject.org. And I send this message to them, which came from an angel father almost 6 years ago when we were trying to, and we did successfully, with the help of many and millions of patriots, stop the Gang of Eight. He said, go home, and this is a message to the senators who wanted to pass an amnesty. He said, go home and gather your children and select which one you will sacrifice for someone else to have a better life, because he has already made that sacrifice, Paul. And that's the message that needs to be asked and sent to every single legislator, again, Republican and Democrat. And I'll tell you, I really press on the Republicans because we already know, and we're actually, removed. I won't say removed. We were accepted to have a booth at the Democratic National Convention, or State Convention, a couple years ago, and we mailed in everything, the application and the check, and confirmed over the phone, but I guess someone did a little research and understood that we are for Americans and against lawbreakers like those who cross here illegally, illegal aliens, and they returned our check and never answered our calls again. So everything weighs on the Republicans, and I'm very disappointed at their failure, and that's why in these next upcoming elections, we certainly need to identify those good America First candidates, Paul, and support them in every way possible, and vote for them. This is what needs to be done, and they need to be identified immediately.
I wonder if there's a way to fast track this to the Supreme Court. Obviously, something like we want to see the wall built. And I know the president does as well. Have you heard anything about that? Is there a way to maybe fast track this to the Supreme Court?
Well, that is something that I remember. If you call President Trump, I don't remember which of his orders that he did try to fast track, and they said no. But I think this is certainly a national emergency and has a much more pressing tone to it, especially when we have had caravans already coming in with their intention to invade the country. And now we have even the largest caravan coming from the southern border. But just take a look at what we know, because we don't have statistics, Paul, and that's done for a reason. We've known this for years. This is our 10th year for the Remembrance Project to be in business, and this is one corporation I wish was not in business, because that would mean that Americans were not being killed all across the United States now, not just on the southern border, by people who shouldn't be here. So I certainly foresee that of course, the Democrats and the liberals will challenge President Trump in the court. Excuse me, getting over a little laryngitis. And I do think he will get to the Supreme Court, and I haven't had any inside information, Paul, but we've been really busy and tied up at different events. So we're just ask your supporters to continue making those calls and hound them, like one of our patriots said. He plans on hounding them, and that's what has to be done.
I've talked with different congressmen. Arkansas's congressman for the 1st District, matter of fact, Rick Crawford, he was on a couple weeks ago. He comes on about once a month. I think either the last time or the time before that he was on. He's a member of the House Intel Committee. The House Intelligence Committee, and he said, he knows stuff that's going on down there that he can't talk about, that the average person doesn't know. Now, so we don't have the full picture of the story. I mean, and even if it was something you could talk about, the media would cover it up, because they've been really covering up this problem for decades. But what I would like, as the National Director of the Remembrance Project, there's a lot of stuff we don't know in terms of, I know it's focused on Americans who are dead because of illegal immigration, but the amount of human trafficking, and this is such an underreported aspect. I think it's the most underreported in this entire situation. The amount of human trafficking. People talk about drugs being a big business. I think human trafficking is a big business here. And if you secure that border, it's an attempt to try to stop what is the president called in his State of the Union address modern-day slavery. What can you tell us about that tragedy that's going on?
I don't follow that, Paul, but yes, it is a huge problem. And just look, maybe about a year and a half ago in Houston, Texas, there was one sting operation, but there were over 100 young girls in that home, and how you can get 100 in any large home, and they were being human trafficked. So sex trafficking, that was huge, and they had been watching this woman for some time, and it was this, I can't remember what they nicknamed Madam of Terror or something, but they drug these girls, and young girls, some as young as 10 and 11 years old, drug them and keep them there, and, forced to have up to 30 Johns in one day. This is absolutely outrageous. And, for for people not wanting to secure the border, that's what you're promoting. That's what you're allowing and encouraging. We, as you said, we focus on the most egregious of all, although that is taking a life as well, Paul, because many of these young girls, they're absolutely not the same when they're removed from that situation that these individuals have stolen their natural lives that they should be without this type of evil in their lives that grabbed hold. So it's a very sad situation. No one wins at this at all.
I'm really glad you used the word evil. I mean, that's what this is. That's what this is on so many different levels, but specifically the human trafficking angle. And the Democrats have voted countless times, Maria, for laws against sex trafficking, and yet they just hate the president so much they refuse. They just refuse to, go along with something that is about national security, and it is about stopping the stuff that's going on down there. It's one of the most dangerous places on the planet, the southern border in places.
Yes, it is, and Congressman Randy Weber, you might want to reach out to him. He was very involved in the human trafficking and raising awareness when he was a state representative in Texas. So he would be excellent, I think, on this issue for you as well. But yes, it's all bad, very terrible, and these politicians Democrats just seem to be, again, complacent, and I think encouraging it, because when Senator Schumer and Representative Pelosi went on national television, Paul, and said, "You're not getting $1. We're not building a wall, Mr. President." What message did that send? And believe me, everyone around the world listens to what United States is doing. And again, in 2013, we were in a hearing about national security, and this is, again, almost 60 years ago. There was a young lady from Germany on one side and an Italian girl on the other side. They were there to listen and learn what the United States was going to do about their immigration problem. So obviously we know that other countries are watching, and I think, I'll go with, in my opinion, I would have to question Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Schumer. What kind of offshore account? How does their offshore account look like? For them to go along with such evil and corruption, they must be getting paid millions.
I mean, you raise an interesting point. On Friday, we talked about the amount of local officials on those border counties in Texas, the sheriffs and mayors and stuff like that, who have been convicted of taking cartel money to look the other way. And we would be stupid to think that money is only going to local officials. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you raise an interesting point, Maria.
Yes, and some law enforcement too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And in some cases, we know the corruption runs very deep in Mexico, obviously, and even our own politicians in that sense, where if they're taking money from the open borders lobbyist groups and not listening to their constituents, and that's corruption in itself.
Yeah.
But, and we also know that this entire southern border is controlled by the cartels. And yes, sometimes they do, the cartels kidnap a family member and, threaten the life of their loved one if they don't do a certain thing, and these are officials. So this is what we have here, and more reason why we need a wall system.
Maria Espinoza, thank you so much for talking about this important issue, the president declaring a national emergency. We really appreciate it, and folks, you need to check out theremembranceproject.org. Maria, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, too, Paul.
All right. Maria Espinoza, everybody.